Shalom. First and foremost, call halal yamala Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai Ba'ashem HaRachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone that I learned this truth from. And also peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. In this video, I'm going to be responding to this article as you see here on the screen. This is from endtimeheadlines.org. Supermarket shelves set to empty as fruit and vegetable growers warn they will have to halt production due to rising costs sparked by Iran war. Okay, so here we see, the effects of the conflict between the United States and Israel versus Iran. All right, is getting worse and worse, right, and getting more and more bitter for Esau. Okay, this whole conflict between the United States and Israel versus Iran, all right, is backfiring more and more upon Esau Edom, primarily the Edomite, okay, that rules here in America, Babylon the Great, as well as the small hats that dwell in the current state of Israel. All right, as we see, not only is the war with Iran, okay, has caused the government of Iran to close off the Strait of Hormuz, okay, and not allowing particular vessel ships carrying oil and gasoline and fuel and things like that to and fro throughout the Persian Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz, okay, because the Iranian government has pretty much blocked it off and only allowing certain vessel ships to pass to and fro that area. All right, but mainly vessel ships dealing with the United States are not allowed to pass through that area, okay, to gain access to particular oil reserves and oil resources in that region. All right, and therefore, what, as we've been seeing over these past 2-3 weeks, is caused gas, the price of gas to rise up here in Babylon, the Great America. People are paying more at the pump over these past few weeks since the start of the Iran war. Okay, and now as we see, the rising cost of fuel and gasoline and transport of goods, things like that, is now getting ready to affect, all right, the shelves. Okay, it's getting ready to affect the food supply, here in Babylon the Great America especially. All right, as the scripture says in Second Ezra, the 6th chapter, and verse 22. All right, and this is associated with the end of Esau's world, right, as it says in verse 9, 2nd Ezra 6 and verse 9. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. All right, Jacob's world being the kingdom of heaven, okay, which is going to be ruled by Yahweh Shai and the tabernacle of David, the 144,000, okay, serving as the governing body of the kingdom of heaven. All right, Jacob's world, which is going to follow after the end of Esau's world. All right, Esau Edom, the so-called white man, all right, who rules the four corners of the earth with his left hand blessing, the blessing of the sword, right, military power, okay, and so on and so forth. We're at the end of Esau's blessing, okay, we're at the end of Esau being able to go to and fro throughout the earth, deceiving, lying, cheating, stealing, okay, hiding under secrecy, being a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. Because what, there's been a snare laid for Esau Edom / Babylon the Great, and now Esau / Babylon the Great has been caught. Okay, Esau's being made bare, and shameful, spewing all over his glory. Okay, the Lord is making inquisition upon Esau, as it speaks of in verse 19 in this chapter. Okay, a thorough investigation, cross-examination. All right, because it's being exposed at an all-time high more than ever who the man of sin is on the earth in his outer days. All right, Esau Edom, the so-called white man, starting with the top elite banking families. Okay, they're the reason why the earth is so jacked up. They're the reason why there's so much conflict and turmoil throughout the earth. Okay, they're the reason why peace has been taken from the earth. All right, and as that article is going into now, we see that the conflicts going on in the so-called Middle East between Esau, here in America, along with the small hats, versus Iran. Okay, now it's getting ready to lead to, all right, famine basically. Okay, store shelves being empty. Crops and produce, being scarce within the stores. All right, and as it speaks to right here in 2nd Ezra 6 and verse 22, associated with the end of Esau's world. 2nd Ezra 6 and verse 22, it says, "And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown; the full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty." See that? As it says, suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. All right, what is that talking about? Okay, your farmers pretty much going out of business. Losing land, which we've definitely been seeing that going on. Since 2020 up until now. A lot of farmers losing their lands or having to go out of business. Okay, and pretty much the elites of Esau, Edom, and the top banking families. Okay, buying up farmland all throughout the United States, Babylon the Great. Okay, and we know what these Edomites, all right, these elite Edomites ultimately plan on doing with all this farmland. Okay, destroying the natural organic animals, chicken, cows, and lambs, goats, right? Particular animals that the Lord created clean to be eaten, right? And we know that Esau, Edom is in these laboratories, okay, creating fake versions of those meats, fake chicken, fake beef, lab grown meat, okay, and eventually, put those products on your shelves, okay, to replace all these products that's pretty much getting taken off the shelves. You see that? And as it says again, 2nd Ezra 6 and verse 22, "And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown." Okay, farmers going out of business, losing lands, losing crops, losing vegetables, losing fruits, right? And it says the full storehouses. All right, what are your storehouses? Your supermarkets, your Walmart, your Costco's, your Targets, your Whole Foods, okay, Publix, Boosie's, these supermarkets, both small and great, okay. The full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. All right, and right now, we're looking at one of the reasons that's going to cause a lot of these storehouses to be found empty in the very near future. Okay, as this conflict between Iran and the United States and Israel continues to escalate and increase. All right, which even right now, Trump is already getting ready to, all right, if he hasn't done it already over this past weekend, send over 2,000 Marines out there in Iran, okay, to literally put boots on the ground to fight out there in Iran, in which we know that's ultimately going to lead to a draft being issued from the U.S. government upon U.S. citizens, both male and female, from the ages of 18 years old to 26 years old. All right, as brother's been going into over this past week or so. Okay, there's getting ready to be a draft. All right, showing you what that this government, okay, of Babylon the Great America, and as well ultimately the government over there in the state of Israel, led by Netanyahu, right? They plan on continuing to escalate this war with Iran. They don't plan on stopping it, okay? Because we know ultimately, according to prophecy, of course, pursuing to Jeremiah, that it's the least of the flock, the small hats, that's ultimately leading Babylon the Great out, and as well these different nations into war in the so-called Middle East. All right, and we know according to prophecy that Iran would be the hot spot to pretty much kick off war within the so-called Middle East. All right, then eventually we know the Lord's going to eventually gather all these different nations, U.S., Israel, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, North Korea, and so on and so forth, down into the valley of Yehoshaphat, which is the region of Saudi Arabia, and eventually there the Lord is going to bring judgment upon the armies of Esau and these heathen nations. You see that? But it's all going to start with this current situation with Iran. You see that? But as we see right here, the whole the conflict between the U.S. and Iran is now getting ready to lead to a shortage of fruits, vegetables, and produce, and merchandise on the shelves of these storehouses here throughout America, Babylon the Great. Okay, and of course that's all due to the rising cost of oil and gasoline, and the rising cost of transporting goods to to and fro to wherever they need to go. All right, throughout Babylon the Great, America. Okay, it's gonna lead to the storehouses being empty, as we just read. Okay, and the sown place appearing unsown. You see that? This is all prophecy. Okay, this war, and again, as we see this conflict between the U.S. and the small hats versus Iran is continuing to escalate. All right, it's looking more and more bad for Esau. Okay, it's biting Esau in the ass more and more. Okay, as there's all kinds of former military generals and military colonels and different talking heads that's been on the internet over these past few weeks. They're all getting on the internet and saying how this war with between the U.S. and Iran is going to backfire heavily upon the U.S. Okay, Esau's pride. The Lord is bringing Esau's pride and his rulership down, along with the sword. You see that? He's bringing down Esau's dominance and influence, as well as a dollar. Okay, the Lord is bringing all these things pertaining to Esau down throughout the earth, because again, we're at the end of Esau's world. Okay, we're at the end. All right, the beginning of the end of Esau's world, and the beginning of the end of Babylon the Great. Okay, because ultimately, Yahweh Shema Shah is speeding up all these things, these prophecies, and these current events throughout the earth, because the Most High Yahweh is getting ready to send His begotten Son Yahweh Shah back to establish a righteous kingdom, the kingdom of heaven. Okay, Jacob's kingdom. All right, and as well, okay, looking at things like this article that you see here on the screen. Okay, even Yahweh Shah himself, spoke perfectly about things like this in the Gospels. Okay, Matthew 24 and verse 6. This Yahweh Shah is speaking on, all right, things that will be going on the earth in a lot of days leading up to His second coming. Right, Matthew 24 verse 6. Yahweh Shah is speaking, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. All right, the end is not yet. Verse 7, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. All right, and of course we see that going on the earth currently right now. All right, Russia versus Ukraine. Okay, U.S. and Israel versus the small hats. China versus Taiwan. Okay, we definitely see nations rising against nations, and kingdoms rising against kingdoms. All right, and he says, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Okay, so everything that Yahweh Shai is speaking of, all right, specifically here in verse 7, all right, we literally see these things happening in the earth as of right now, currently in these latter days. Nation against nation, country, fighting wars against other countries. We see famine on the horizon. We see pestilence going throughout the earth. Okay, different diseases and sicknesses everywhere, viruses, right? Mysterious fog just popping up. Every time you look up, right? And as well, earthquakes in diverse places, different weather effects. Okay, as a matter of fact, I even put a screenshot on my page in the in the community tabs the other day on how with pretty much within the next couple of days or so, all throughout the United States, certain parts of the United States is going to undergo heavy snow. Certain parts of the U.S. is going to undergo a heat wave. Certain parts are going to be hit with mass wind. Okay, there's going to be all kinds of weather effects all across Babylon the Great within these next couple of days. Okay, and again, everything that Yahushua is speaking to here in Matthew 24 verse 7, we see it all literally come to pass right before our eyes. But as Yahushua said in verse 8, this is all just the beginning. Okay, the beginning of sorrows. You see that? The beginning of famine, the beginning of pestilence, the beginning of earthquakes and different weather effects throughout the earth. Okay? And situations like this, which you see here on the screen, this is going to bring forth famine. Okay? Store shelves being found empty, lack of fruits and vegetables and crops and produce and meat. Okay? This is going to bring, mass famine throughout Babylon and Great America. Okay? Because here in America, especially, people here in America are so spoiled, right? With all these little comforts and luxuries and being able to go to their favorite store or go to their favorite coffee shop or whatever, and just have their heart's desire, right? Having access to their favorite foods or their favorite drinks or their favorite desserts and things like that. Okay, well, this conflict with Iran that's continuing to escalate is getting ready to bring it into to all of that, very, very soon. Okay, famine. As a matter of fact, even as Yahushua spoke of in Luke 21, all right, which we always get. Luke 21 verse 25, this is associated with the return of Yahushua. He says, and there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars. Okay, different signs in the heavens. Blood moons. Okay, blue moons. All right, eclipses. All right, planets aligning. Right in front of each other. Okay, we definitely been seeing these things over these past, years, especially from 2020 up until now. Different signs in the heavens, eclipses, signs in the moons, sun, right? Planets lining up, and as well, of course, chariot sightings, right? And he says, and upon the earth distress of nations, all right? Kingdom against kingdom, nation against nation, right? Political turmoil. And he says, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, weather effects, all right, as well as uproars of the people, which second as the ninth chapter speaks of that. Okay, one of the major signs in the end times of Yahweh Shema Shai visiting the earth will be associated with uproars of the people. Okay, political turmoil and things like that, unstable leaders. Okay, but as we always highlight this word perplexity in Luke 21 verse 25. Strong's G640, aporia, the state of one who was in perplexity. When you go to the root word, Strong's G639, porio, and it means what? To be without resources, to be in straits, to be left wanting, to be embarrassed, to be in doubt, not to know which way to turn. Okay, to be at loss with oneself. All right, and that's just going to have a lot of these people, especially here in America, Babylon the Great. That's going to have a lot of these people losing their minds in these days and weeks and months to come. Okay, because what? As this war with Iran is going to continue to escalate, all right, and backfire upon America, okay, and put more strain on America's economy and and weaken the dollar more and more, right? And ultimately, put more hell upon the middle class is going to lead to a lack of resources. Okay, store shelves being empty, gas continuing to get higher and higher. while at the same time, the supply of fuel and gasoline getting lower and lower, which is going to further cause the price of gas at the pump to go up more and more, right? And all these things are going to have a lot of these people, without resources, without access to resources, or just plain old not being able to afford and keep up with the inflation of goods, right, and resources, and therefore what? People are going to be left wanting. They're going to be in doubt, right, in a state of uncertainty, and they're going to be a loss of themselves. They're going to be losing their damn minds, and you best believe it's going to be that famine. Okay, without a doubt, according to the scriptures, famine was going to be one of the main things, if not the main thing, shall I say? Okay, that's going to have a lot of these American people, especially, eventually taken into the streets. All right, because real quick, even when you go to 2 Ezra 15, which brothers pretty much bring this prophecy out damn near every day, damn near every video. Okay, we always go into 2 Ezra 15 and verse 14 on down, where it goes into sedition and people rising up against the government and taking to the streets, right? Which is going to lead to lockdowns. Man shall desire to go into the city and shall not be able to, but because of lockdowns and checkpoints, right? And Esau coming with this left hand order out of chaos. But when you go to verse 19, 2 Ezra 15 verse 19 says, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword. Okay, guns, firearms, right? Because mind you as well, all right, Babylon the Great America, the USA, has the highest number of legally armed citizens, and you best believe that's not done by coincidence. Okay, ultimately, Yahweh Shai set it up like that by design. Okay, because this is going to be the main place where shit is going to hit the fan. Okay, where all hell is going to break loose, and there's going to be all out anarchy. Okay, in the earth, and that's going to take place primarily here in America, Babylon the Great. All right, and what's going to cause many people in Babylon the Great America, all right, soon to come, to destroy their neighbor houses with the sword. It says, and spoil their goods, okay, because of the lack of bread. See that? Because of the lack of bread. Lack of food, lack of resources, lack of essential needs and medical needs, right? It says, and for great tribulation, okay, Jacob's trouble, all right, in which Yahweh himself spoke of, great tribulation in the Gospels, okay. Yahweh spoke about it in Matthew 24, how, in these latter days there will be great tribulation leading up to the return of Yahweh, and that what? That the days would ultimately be shortened for the elect's sake, at least what? At least no flesh should be saved. You see that? But as we see right here in 2 Ezra 15 verse 19, shit is getting ready to hit the fan. Okay, it's going to be, citizens warring against each other, civil war, people invading their neighbors' houses and, spoiling their houses and spoiling their goods with the sword. All because eventually what? Because of lack of bread. Because it's going to be perplexity and famine and food shortages everywhere. You see that? And there's even a quote, a famous quote that talks about how, basically when people lose it, they lose it. See that? When these American people lose out on their bread and circus and their particular comforts and luxuries that they boast in, these people are going to be losing their minds. And on top of that, America has the highest number of heavily armed, legally armed citizens throughout any country throughout the world. Okay, that's all done by design, ultimately by Yahweh Shema Shah, because here in America is where Jacob's trouble is going to hit the worst. Okay, all out chaos and all out anarchy is going to hit the worst here in America, Babylon the Great. All right, and that's all done by design of Yahweh Shema Shah. For His will and His prophecies to come to pass in these latter days, for Yahweh Shai to return. okay, and ultimately deliver the elect out of this chaotic environment that's getting ready to take place in the earth, especially here in Babylon the Great America. Okay. Let me go ahead and get this. NLT this, or rather put the NLT next to this. This is Psalms 37 and verse 18 in the NLT. It says, "Day by day, the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai takes care of the innocent." Okay, who is that? The elect. Okay, the remnant. Those is going to be found blameless and without fault. Okay, by being covered by the blood of Hamashiach Yahushai. Alright, Lord will not be of that number. Okay, it says again, Psalms 37 verse 18 in the NLT. Day by day the Lord Yahweh Shai takes care of the innocent. Alright, and they will receive an inheritance that lasts forever. Okay, the kingdom of heaven. Alright, under Yahweh Shai. Verse 19 in the NLT. They will not be disgraced in hard times. Okay, Jacob's trouble. They will not be disgraced in hard times. Even in famine, they will have more than enough. You see that? So as famine and perplexity, right, is all getting ready to come down the pipe in Jacob's trouble. Hey, as we just read right here, Yahweh Shema Shah is going to take care of the elect in these hard times coming down the pipe. Okay, even in the midst of famine. All right, the Lord Yahweh Shema Shah is gonna make sure that His elect, all right, not only have enough to endure through the end, right, but more than enough to endure through the end. Okay, even through famine. You see that? Because even like the scripture says in believe Isaiah 65, the Lord said His servants are gonna eat in these times. Okay, His servants, right, the men of the Lord. Starting with the apostles, the bishops, and the elders, a great millstone that I learned this truth from, on down to the least of us that are of the hopeful elect. Hey, Yahweh Shema Shah is gonna make sure that we eat, all right, and that we're satisfied in these times to come. All right, Lord will not be of that number. You see that? And so, you could pretty much, read up more on this article. But yeah, once again, we see now, we see one more indicator on how this conflict between the United States and the small hats versus Iran, all right, all it's gonna do is just make things worse for Babylon, okay, and especially make things worse for the citizens of Babylon the Great America, okay, and especially the middle class, as your gas is already going up. And now you're getting ready to lose out on your food. Your fruits, your vegetables, your meat, okay? Certain items and food items that you love to buy out of the store. Well, guess what? That's getting ready to be over with. Okay, the full storehouses are getting ready to be empty, as we read earlier in 2nd Ezra 16:22. You see that? So wait, this is just one more indicator amongst many indicators that, hey, Babylon the Great is through. Okay, America is through. Where the beginning of the end of Esau's rulership, which is also synonymous with the beginning of the end of Babylon. All right, and hey, may Yahweh Shema Shai continue to be with us, the hopeful elect, as the straight gate is getting ready to get straighter. You see that? And so so with that, I'm gonna end it off right there. Lord willing, this video is edifying, and until next time, Shalom.